Hi and welcome to Edge of Play's New Coach Starter Pack Chapter 6 Part 3. In Part 3 we're looking at how you reflect on matchday performance, both for yourself and the team as well. You will probably find that you're reflecting on the game automatically even during it, but certainly immediately after it, what's going well, what hasn't gone well, and all those things. Your mind will be racing a bit, that's the nature of the game. I'd say your first reflection will be immediately after the game, and that can just be internally thinking it through. That can be as you're giving the initial team talk and you're thinking it through and verbalising what you're feeling. It can be from a chat with your assistant or another coach. It can also be after you get in your car after the game, you've got all the gear in the back of the car, and you sit there and you'll have a quick think about it, or even that journey home, you'll be thinking it through. That's totally normal to do that, and it's thinking at this point where you've come away from the venue itself, where you can start to get some clarity to your thoughts. The adrenaline comes down, the emotion comes away slightly, and you start to think it through, and you start to compartmentalise all your ideas on it. You put the positives, things that could be better, players that stood out, players that need more work, and so on. And then there's before your next training session, you'll often find then before your next training session you think back to the last game that's still fresh in the mind, and that can sometimes then mean you end up doing training sessions that are just based on the last game, and that can be a danger. But you'll see that if you look at the coaching section on planning your sessions. You don't just want to be firefighting all the time, but certainly going to your next session, there might be aspects of that session where you'll address something that happened in the last match, and that's okay. Just be aware of that when you're planning your session. Is that thing that happened in the game that you're reflecting on worth changing your plans? That, the longer term, bigger picture, is it worth changing for that? If it's a recurring issue, it might well be, but just think it through. And you'll find as well you reflect again before your next match. As you're planning your next match, as you're at the next match, it'll still be fresh from the last game. You're only as good as your last game, that kind of idea. You might adapt certain instructions or things you're going to say to the team or to individual players. And like I mentioned with your last session, those recurring themes, if you're reflecting on the same issues coming up again and again, that's where you think, right, what can I change? How can I adapt things so these issues are kind of dealt with and the themes are changed? That idea that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. I think it's such a true one. So it might be, if you're thinking that you're coming away with the same reflections again and again, change it up, see what you can do to adapt. Again, I'd suggest, like with training and pre-match planning, I'd suggest having a template that you can use to reflect on the game, get some of the key info from the game and have it recorded. If it's all just kind of on scattered bits of paper, you're probably going to lose that and it's hard to keep a track of it. So I've done this post-game match sheet, which would go on the back, if you double-sided it, on the back of the pre-game match sheet, which I showed you in part 1. So you could then use this sheet, pre-game, one side, fill that in. After the game, you fill it in, and then you put it into a folder, and you've got that record of the before stage and then the after stage of the game. At the top here, it's got the key details of the match, including the score, any notes you might have about the game to remind yourself. I've then put a section in here, which is coaching reflections. So by that, things that I'm reflecting on myself on as a coach. How did I do in the game? Did I manage to stick to my codes of conduct? Were my interventions positive, and so on? Then we've got here team reflections as a whole. What were the strengths of the team? What were the areas for development? It can just be a sentence, it can just be a key word that stands out. If there's something that you think was relevant, put it down there. In weeks to come, you may forget about the individual things, but if you look there and you keep seeing strengths popping up week in, week out, you can then adapt your training to that, or you can really point it out to the players that it's a key area of strength for the team. And then down here I've got your player stats and notes. So you name the player, who played, you might put there how long they played, goals, assists, clean sheets for those in defence and the goalkeeper. And then here I've left a blank column which you can use for whatever you see fit, really, and then any comments you have as well. So I'll show you now an example of a filled in sheet just to give you an idea. I've put here in the notes at the top that punctuality an issue. It's the kind of thing you might comment on. 3 or 4 players are arriving late, you might make a comment on that to remind yourself to speak to the players at the next session. I've put here, I need to intervene less mid-game, players were confused, struggled to organise replacements mid-game, found it distracting. So an example there that you might do that, and then next game you might have a bit more of a plan for your replacements for the subs in the game, and you also might make a point of trying to intervene a little bit less. Strength, we were great out of possession today, everyone worked hard. Development area, more patience in possession, defending throw-ins was an issue. So that might come into my next session. it might be that my next session's on something that's linked to that, and so I can kind of ease it in there if I think it's a big issue. Or it might be I just keep an eye on this column. If over the next lot of weeks I'm seeing one of these things pop up again and again, you think we need to address this, that's when you might start to adjust training plans to get that in there. Otherwise, it might be something as simple as a quiet word with a player that's struggling to get goal side, for example. You might, if it's the younger players and you're trying to make sure the time on the pitch is quite equal, so from week to week you're keeping a bit of a track of minutes these players are getting, you might have the amount of minutes they played. For open age side, that might not be the case. It might not be a case of it all being fair and equal times. You earn your play time, and then when you get it, do what you can with it. But if it's a young side, can you keep some kind of a track of the amount of time the players are getting on the pitch? You'd have your stats here for tracking goals and assists and clean sheets. I think clean sheets is an important one because if you're at the back or you're a goalkeeper, you're never going to get too high on the goals numbers. Some defenders may get high on the assists and so on, but generally speaking, you're not really giving them a chance in that category because of where they are on the pitch. So I think it's a good thing to recognise when the defence do a good job and shore up the back line there. And I've used this column here for who's paid, one player's going to pay at training, and then I've put the last column here, just some individual comments on players. This isn't what I would share with the players necessarily. This might be something for you to keep an eye on it. You might use it when you then start to create player profiles for the team, which is in the next chapter, as an idea for what to set them as targets. Sometimes you can come away from a game and you can think, oh, we were awful, that was terrible, no one played well. But then you actually look at your names of your players and you look across and think, well, you know what, that player, he got an assist, he didn't do much wrong, he worked really hard, and thinking about it, he didn't give the ball away much. So you all of a sudden start to individualise the feedback you're going to give, and it can make you see the game differently. You look away from that scoreline and you look away from the overall feeling, you sometimes get a different idea, and that can be the other way. This game won 4-0, for example. You might have heaped praise on the players, but it's not till you look at the player and you remember actually they had a bit of a struggle that day, or they weren't using the ball well, or they weren't following instructions, whatever it is. So just something to think about. Some key questions I'd say when you're reflecting: did the players enjoy it, or at least learn from the experience? Sometimes you don't enjoy everything you do. I'm hoping the players got something from it though. It can just be that they got to run around with their friends. That might be all it takes for some players. But did they learn something from it at the very least? And that should be pretty much always possible, to come away and learn something. And so you go away, you think, well, I've used my time well today. Got some exercise in. I've learned I need to use my weaker foot a bit more. Whatever it is. I think the younger they are, you're hoping they're going home most weeks and they've enjoyed themselves. I'm not saying you're laughing at losing and things like that. I know some people would find that really frustrating, but just the whole idea that it's not everything. The idea that you could come along and see lots of positives in a day, even if the result didn't go your way, And when you get older, that'll become the key bit of it. And I'm fine with that as well. But I wouldn't be working with under 8s or under 9s and so on, saying, oh, we haven't won today, not good enough, you shouldn't be happy, go home and have a think about how you're doing. Just have a think of the age of the players. Did they enjoy themselves? Because if they did, they go away and they're going to want to come back, and they're going to be motivated to come back and work on things and get better and better. Did you enjoy it? And again, think why. If you're coming away regularly not enjoying yourself and you're just frustrated, can you adapt something? Is there something you can do differently? Are you putting it all on this kind of on the result? Is it all on the players doing exactly as you worked on at training? Or can you come away and say, see little victories like that player did use his weaker foot, that player's really getting the confidence now, that player's getting has more courage now when they're going to challenges they were really scared before. So it can be little wins like that you come away, take some pride from that, take some enjoyment. We go through a routine, and sometimes you just need to step back and go, how much of my time am I giving to something that I'm not enjoying? And if you're not enjoying yourself, why are you doing it? Are you in the right age group? Are you working with the right team? Are you in the right sport? Are you doing the right thing? Was everyone safe is a key one. And you look back through and think that everyone was safe throughout the game, match day, everything was done as well as it could have been. You can't take away all risk. It's not possible. It's a contact sport. Things will happen. But did you do everything you could to make sure everyone was safe, everyone left safely and so on? And importantly, again, were your codes of conduct adhered to by players, by you and the other coaches, by the parents? Have you all adhered to them? And if not, what do you need to do about it? If there was an issue that cropped up in the game, don't just leave it and keep moving on. Well, hopefully that won't happen again. That parent was shouting at the referee. I'd say deal with these things. If you leave it, it just builds up and gets a bigger issue. We talked about that in communication chapter in the management section. But yeah, try and deal with things so they're not an issue next time out. So that brings us to the end of chapter 6. We've looked at matchday planning, matchday delivery, and then reflecting on those games as well. In chapter 7, we'll look at player profiles. And by that, we'll be looking at safeguarding, ways you can keep records to make sure you understand your players and their needs and that they're safe. And also look at development as well. Player profiles, where you can kind of work with your players to kind of guide them towards their strengths and areas for development, and so they can actually see what they need to do to improve as a player. See you then.